Hello. How's it going?
Hello, hello. It's going great. How are you doing?
So far so decent. Can't complain. It didn't snow, which makes it a fantastic Michigan day.
We've had snow every Sunday. I've planned to fix a fence every Sunday, and it snowed every Sunday for 2 months now out here in Colorado. I'm just like, this fence is not getting fixed. It's just gonna fall over from the snow at this point.
No, just cover it in water, let it freeze. There we go. Ice fence.
I've got like one day a week I can fix it. Every time I check the weather, the snow moves to.
Yeah, it always does that. Just snow always finds a way to somehow ruin stuff no matter what. Like even when it's finally thawing, it finds a way to just hang over the roof, just slightly enough that you're starting to worry that it's gonna rip the gutters off, and it's like you gotta go poke it with a stick, and then it falls on your face, and
I know what you mean. Last year it was trash day, like in December. Every trash day it would snow and they'd be like, we'll pick it up next time. And after like 4 weeks of that, people are like, no, like, you have to come out here. You can't just the snow is gonna keep hitting on Wednesdays. You've gotta do something about it.
nah. From now on, just let it freeze. They just gotta come back with all the ice saws and everything. Just kind of saw it out of there.
Well, it's Colorado. Oh, I should shut that off. I had something that would beep. Hopefully that didn't come through. But yeah, I it's Colorado, so like it'll snow and you have a blizzard, and the next day it's like 70 degrees and everything's melted off. It's just like that one day it stops the city, and the next day you're sweating again.
Yeah, it's pretty similar here. It just never stops being overcast. So it takes an extra couple days to melt, and it's just like, please melt. No, best I can do is frozen road. Sorry.
Yeah, Michigan always was the black sludge. Maybe it's just Detroit. Maybe it's just
It's
where I was in.
oh no, that's just Michigan everywhere.
Okay.
there's so much salt everywhere that it just creates that nastiness all over the place. And then you can't tell where the black ice is, and that's when relatives will suddenly randomly call, and you gotta get called out at like 2 a.m. to go help somebody that's stranded, half a mile outside of town.
Yeah, my family came from there, so we would go there to visit, relatives. But no, now that I'm out in Colorado, all my relatives have moved to Florida, so they're like, "Oh, do you want to come visit for the holidays?" And they're like, "Where there's snow?" They're like, "No, like we're not coming out there. We got out of Michigan for a reason."
Yeah, that's a solid no. It's kind of the same thing as Florida. Like I give my brother shit for that all the time. Like, oh, you're in Florida, you got all the snakes and old people on bath salts. He's like, yeah, but you got all the snow. Touche, touche. Uh,
Yeah, for us, it's Texas and Florida, where it's like Florida has, alligators in your swimming pool, and it's like, yeah, but Texas has like scorpions in your shoes and your bed. They're like, I'd rather have the scorpions. I'm like, yeah, but there's like a phone number you call and they come and take the alligators out of your swimming pool. If you wake up and there's a bunch of scorpions in your bed, like, you can't call anyone. You just sit there and cry.
yeah, that's when you get the shoe. You just kind of beat it until it stops moving. We had that problem in New Mexico. That yeah, you would get scorpions that would just kind of crawl in every now and then. Just beat it till it dies. Best I can offer is death. Sorry,
Well,
but yeah.
Tactics Ogre, congratulations first on being on the Resident Arc podcast. I've also noticed that since I started streaming it, all these random people who are looking for videos, they kind of came there because of you. So you try and offer them advice, and they're like, no, no, I watched a coffee potato video on this. It's like, okay. In that case, you're
That stuff
probably
feels
good to
good.
play the game.
That stuff feels good. Not gonna lie. It's great to be an expert
So I
on
have to
something.
say, you do give people a strange idea of what's possible. Like, I think some people are looking at your strategies and not thinking, like, this is the optimal way to play as a beginner, but they're like, yeah, I think I'm going to go all fairies, right? It's like, I think this is the way to play. And it's like, well, it's not the only way to play. It's probably not the best way to play, but I will concede that it is a way that Coffee Potato plays and succeeds at, right?
You know what? I will take that because one of those things that I regularly see in videos that always kind of gives me that like, if you say so, buddy, kind of moment is like just the number of folks that came from the series completely out of nowhere. They're like, "Yeah, I've played a single Fire Emblem before, a decade and a half ago. It's time for me to do a no in cap run. What are my optimal strategies?" Like, you got no idea what you're getting in for, buddy. Like, no, 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 it's fine. I know what I'm doing. Okay,
Uh,
okay. Tried to warn you.
is that why so many people hit Oz and just like hitting a brick wall?
Oh yeah,
Like, how
oh
do I
yeah.
beat this without dying? It's like, with Oz, you probably don't. Like, someone's gonna die.
Like
That's okay.
I got a feeling a lot of it must have come from like looking at guides in the like the original PSP version or something. Because in so many cases it seems to be stuff like, oh, I got to this point and I can't grind past this.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's like you don't do that this time. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. You can't just anatomy crush your way through this one. Uh
I, I love the rogue class. Like I really do. But every time I look back at what Let Us Cling Together had, all the things that were kind of janky for it, I'm like, I don't think I can go back. Like maybe, but then I think of the crafting system or the levels being like the class gets a level, not the character gets a level, and I'm like, I don't know that I ever need to play Let Us Cling Together. It was a great game. It was, tied for first with War of the Lions for a long time for me, but now that Reborn's out, like it's not really a competition, right? We'll see how Final Fantasy Remastered does if it comes out, but Reborn is just it cleaned up so much. It's just easier to play and more fun.
yeah, for sure. Like that's why typically whenever I say that there's, two versions and whatnot, it's like, well, you basically got Reborn as the official one, and then you got One Vision that kind of fixed the PSP version. Um, like just because in like with that particular one there's so much stuff that they changed that the whole class leveling system and whatever else kind of accomplishes a similar thing to what the level caps do in Reborn, where the basic idea is just kind of to keep everybody more or less level. um but yeah, in the original PSP version, like it got out of hand so quick. Like in many ways, it feels like a really kind of mean comparison, but in many ways, it does feel like it was like Oblivion or something. It's like they had all these really cool ideas, and then just halfway through, they got a little bit drunk and stuff went off the rails. Uh,
I wonder, like, I can't remember. It's been so long, right? 2011 was a long time ago. Could you set your units to AI for doing Palace of the Dead back then? Because here's where I gave up for Let Us Cling Together, right? I had I wanted Canopus to have fusils, which required ogre blades and all that kind of shenanigans, right? To have a Canopus Buccaneer who could use a gun,
yeah, that was
um,
hilarious.
and have dual wield, and like I just didn't want to go through Palace of the Dead that much. Whereas now it's like, people are like, I don't get why people are so obsessed with the zombie AI team. It's like, well, between the Palace guides and everything else, it actually kind of makes Palace of the Dead not drag. Like you can just pop in and you're like, I want an ogre blade, and you AI battle 7 things and then take over for Blackmore, right?
Yeah,
It
and
it's become a lot easier, and I don't think you could do that in Let Us Cling Together, but I could be wrong.
you
Uh,
could, but it was weird. Like it had a lot of very oddly specific limitations. Like for example, it would gladly do the whole exorcism thing, but it also would have a tendency to burn out of MP obscenely fast. And since it wasn't combined with the TP system like it is in Reborn there, you kind of had the situation where like you had to very specifically tailor somebody to not have a lot of the cheaper spells, because they would look around, they're like, wow, that guy has taken 1 damage over there. You know what, I need to heal him. There's like, 4 guys ready to be exercised right over there. It's like, please just use
okay.
exorcism. No. You had cases like the stun locking gremlins, where just due to a combination of like weight creep towards the end of the game and whatnot, you had the gremlins that could potentially permanently stun lock somebody through their RT delay abilities. You had fairies and whatnot with all kinds of bewitch moves that just, yeah, that stuff got dire real quick. Um, Basically from top to bottom, there were a lot of things that could go wrong. It's like you could make that team to make it happen, but there were a lot of asterisks to that particular thing that made it a bit difficult to actually pull off. Um, So yeah,
That's interesting compared to how it is now. Like, when I wanted to set up a zombie AI team, like the first thing I did was I just grabbed a whole bunch of matriarchs and zombified them, right? Like 12 zombified matriarchs kind of solves a lot of problems.
oh yeah, and
I mean, I improved it from there, like dragon scale. That was the first hitch I had, and then like you need a. It's not perfect, but having said that, like it gets you going in an effective way, and then you can kind of optimize around removing dragon scale and exorcism and even the necromancers, right? You have a zombie necromancer or two in there, and now they're healing everyone, and they like to use their skill to get them back up before they can get exercised. But just starting out, I mean, matriarchs, zombified, that'll get you through it.
yeah, plus so much less stuff carries exorcism in Reborn. There, I mean, there's still more than many realize. Like you still got stuff like the pumpkins with their crystal pumpkins and whatnot. But you got like back in PSP, it was just like if there is a cleric whatsoever, 100% of the time they will always have exorcism. If you got anybody with any kind of exorcism move like in their arsenal at all, they will always have access to it. Um, like it just basically meant that zombie teams were a really weird potential way that a lot of stuff could go wrong in the PSP version. Um, which actually it's interesting. In terms of the different versions, the way that One Vision addressed that problem is like they basically start you off with necromancers, and they kind of have this almost reverse cleric thing going on, where they can sort of get everybody going a lot faster than they can potentially be exercised off. Just leads to this fun situation where you can make super evasive zombie builds. Like you make a zombie hoplite, right? And eventually they end up getting hit because they're running full evasion builds, but then that evasion ends up making you avoid the exorcism. So it's just like this weird immortality build kind of thing that you could kind of go for there.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, it's a mod with a lot of interesting things to potentially discuss, but I wanted to point out a lot of those with this one kind of like series retrospective thingy that I'm trying to do in the background for ages now. Uh, anyway,
What was the name of the mod that took the SNES version, but then tried to pull in the day-night mechanics in every class from the entire series? Was that
oh, Chronicle Valeria.
Valeria? Yeah.
Dude, that mod is so good. I wish it was in English.
Yeah, I know. It's like you hear what they're doing and you're like, this is kind of the ultimate fan project. It just needs English.
Yeah, and I just love the story of every attempt that was made to translate it. Just like the fact that there's apparently documented evidence somewhere on some forum of just like somebody coming in like, please let me go off this project. It's too much for me to possibly have a life and succeed at the same time.
Oh,
Like, it's simply too much for one human being. Like, oh my God, what's in this mod?
that's how I
Uh,
played the original Trials of Mana, Secret of Mana 2, Seiken Densetsu 3. Like, it was just those old fan translation projects that were just so terrible, right? Like I enjoyed going through them and getting to experience these games, but anytime you have an RPG, you start to realize like how much text you're looking at, and people would just give up halfway through.
Oh yeah, like that's one of those things I love to point out about like why the OV mod impressed me so dang much was just like on top of how much is already in the game, the PSP version it had this thing where for every different level bracket, there were not only multiple things that could spawn, but just completely different versions of every single fight on a preposterous number of different scenarios. It's like I think he said the maximum was like seven different versions of a single fight or something. It's like that seems disgusting.
Bringing
uh,
it back to Let Us Clean Together, something that I think strikes me about Reborn specifically is that for a lot of us, we play these games because we love customizing abilities from different classes, like because we started with Final Fantasy Tactics. Reborn does take that away, kind of, right? Like people who would have wanted dual wield from Ninja now have it as Knight Commander. But I would not have believed that Reborn could be better than Let Us Clean Together while removing that until, the Lord class or the Ogre Blade. And that kind of surprised me because I thought it was pretty key to why I enjoy a game. Felseal taught me that, right? Like
Yeah.
Felseal does that better than any other game. So I didn't think Reborn could take away a lot of that aspect and still be such a good game, but it just is, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it was because they leaned into the equipment. There's something that I think started back in Night of Lotus, that just didn't really get to see its full kind of potential until Reborn happened, and that was just the equipment slots. Just slapping skills on equipment. Obviously, One Vision did this as well, but like just this idea of like, well, instead of creating this hybrid spellcaster, you got this guy that's carrying a specific weapon around. If you want to have, let's say, your time mage type of stuff on a knight, instead of cross-classing them, you get them some luminant guards and stuff like that. It's just like it's just an interesting switch up to what you would usually expect from these things that just feels really good. Um, so I think
Yeah.
that's
And they
part
were
of it.
very smart about it too. Like that can go horribly awry. It's
Oh,
very
sure.
easy for putting skills on gear to not work, but I mean, it was kind of the stuff we were wasting skill slots on anyways for the base of it, right? And then the relics all give you things you generally want, like boon of swiftness and things like that. So yeah, kudos to whoever had to make those decisions. I don't know if that was Matsuna or not, but it
Yeah,
worked extremely well.
I've got no idea, but yeah, it definitely did some interesting stuff there. Because this stuff, most of it, funnily enough, there's actually technically less of those functions than there were back in PSP, but the way that they're handled makes a hell of a lot more sense. And frankly, the AI actually gets a chance to use them in a lot of cases. I mean, there are still limitations, of course, but like, for example, stuff like the flying boots and things were stuff that were always there, and technically were were something that you could get somewhat easily in the PSP version, but nobody used them because you had to activate them, uh, or um, or stuff like the Caldia had its charm spell on there, but at the same time you could just go get a scroll and do that at any point. Um, so it just didn't really make sense to care about those equipment slots much outside of the multiplayer that nobody played.
Yeah, that's true. We were all casting everything from grimoires in that
Oh yeah,
game.
it's like why would you ever use exorcism? Just carry a bunch of grimoire exorcisms.
And you had the reagents for necromancy and draconic spells, right? So like
Yeah.
even if you were in Palace of the Dead, you were kind of limited on how many times you could cast Starfall, and that was not fun.
Yeah, and you just get 99 Grimoires, like, there you go, free Starfall whenever the hell I want to. I don't have to worry about the MP. I don't have to worry about having enough, friggin' eyeballs or whatever to cast my necromancies. I can reach in my
I feel
pocket full
bad
of
for Let Us Cling
eyeballs.
Together. It was a great game though. Like Let Us Cling Together was a great game at the time. I think that's also sort of something I'm realizing as I don't know, maybe as I get older, but it's not necessarily the perfect unambitious game I want anymore. I kind of want games that are a little messy and overly ambitious. Like I get more enjoyment out of a Legend of Mana than a Secret of Mana, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that's why a hell of a lot of people prefer something like Fallout New Vegas to, it- well, basically just name whatever AAA thing you'd like. Which I know you said you haven't played New Vegas, right?
No, I have not.
Okay, that's one thing I hope to cover on the channel at some point because it is a really, really a damn impressive thing that I think you'd probably like. Um, because it's very, very similar to Tactics Ogre in many ways. Um, Also, I just noticed I screwed up my trio run over here. Whoops. Anyway, uh, but yeah,
You
it's
have persuaded me to pick up XCOM. I haven't played XCOM yet. I managed to get Vagrant Story, but it's like you can't play it on the PS4. You have to hook up an old PS3 if you have it on the PSN there. If you
wait,
don't have memory
seriously?
left. Yeah,
Ah, that's
I
some
was like, oh
crap.
no, they took it out of the store, and I like bought it, and the next day it's gone, and um, then I went and hooked up the PS3, and I'm like, oh good. So like right now we've got the PS3 hooked up for Vagrant Story, and the Wii hooked up for March of the Black Queen and Ogre Battle 64.
That's why I love the Vita. Just keep all that stuff in my pocket. Yeah, the PS1 versions. But
Yeah, but you missed the charm of the Wii version of Ogre Battle 64, where they are trying to avoid non-existent copyright issues by renaming
True.
Some of the weirdest swords.
Like renamed the entire game is made up of Queen references. How do we get around this? Rename it the Balmung, I guess, or what was it? Not Balmung. Wasn't it the Grimlock or something?
Yeah, so the glam rock, obviously a reference to the genre. Yeah, that one got renamed because I guess they didn't realize it was just a rock name because they were trying to rename like the swords that were clearly Lord of the Rings swords too, right? Anything they thought might be Lord of the Rings copyrightable, they renamed, and I think they got to that one and they're like, glam rock.
Glamdring?
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, that one got renamed too. That's now the Slam Bring. It's just the worst fantasy name. Just going around with your Slam Bring and your Graham Lock.
This is the Gramlock we have at home. Ah, jeez. That's
So
amazing.
I stand by the Wii version as the definitive version of Ogre Battle 64.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I
If
mean,
you
great.
don't have the granny lock, then you're just not playing the real game. You're not getting the experience of lasers and all that. I was surprised though that we loaded up the game, and I planned to just wipe all of the save files and start from scratch, but Sayre's game was there, and he had Love and Peace every possible Black Knight. So it was just like an army of Black Knights on the hidden level that interrupts the credits, and I'm like, well, I can't delete that save file. What if somebody shows up at my house and is like a secret level in the credits of Ogre Battle 64? I'd love to play that. Like, I couldn't wipe the save file. I'm like, this is too weird. Like, I need to take a picture of it first, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, it's probably the one benefit of like playing on an emulator and whatnot. Just like as many save files as you want.
Oh,
Like
that's true. I have heard that if you like the Nintendo 64, you could press a button to access the hidden save stuff if you had the memory expansion, and I guess that's in the Wii version too. I just don't know what button to press to get to it.
I got no
That kind
clue.
of blew my mind the first time I saw someone do that, and they're like, "Yeah, here's how you access the extra 20 save slots on a Ogre Battle 64." I was like, "What? Like, what? Why did nobody ever tell me this?"
That's why I like the PS1 versions. They just come with those slots. Uh, Also, weird note. Have you played? I assume you've played like Tactics Ogre SNES, right?
Yeah, I was a little kid when it came out, and it was at Blockbuster, so like I couldn't get through it in the weekend. You'd have it for 2 or 3 days, right?
Oh yeah, you told me
So
this. Yeah.
yeah, same thing with March of the Black Queen. But the moment people were like, "Oh, this is very popular, but also sold out immediately," they were like, "Do I want to pay $100, behind an alley, or just steal the Blockbuster copy?" And same thing happened with Tactics Ogre for the SNES, right? Like people just stole it immediately. It sold out, then got stolen from the rental places. So I played it, but I didn't come close to beating it back then.
Yeah, the wonders of how on earth did they possibly not survive? Uh, but yeah, no, I was asking it just because I'm wondering if you ever ran into the same thing.
No. What's the just
So
running out of save slots, or what was the issue?
so I don't know if I'm just extremely unlucky on this because I've had it happen to me 3 times at this point. But the SNES version in particular has some kind of bug. Apparently, it's patched in some versions and not in others. I don't know if I just got a bad ROM that I was using for a while or what. But uh, but yeah, apparently it just basically deletes your save file. You try to load it, it just can't load it. Other times it just isn't there anymore. Um, so it's funny because I've only run into a couple other folks that ever ran into that issue, but it's permanently colored my experience of that particular version.
Oh no.
It's
Okay.
like it's why I always introduce the PS1 version as the one with actually stable saves. Apparently it's super rare, but like man, I ran into it 3 times now. That sucked. uh
We had what's there was a Super Nintendo Jurassic Park for Super Nintendo didn't have a save feature. It was like a super buggy game, but it would take like hours to beat. It kind of became a point of pride where like you weren't trying to beat the game, you were trying not to get it to crash. So you weren't like figuring out how do you avoid a T-Rex. You were like, okay, if you walk near the coffee pot, the game crashes. So you're like trying to navigate your way through the game's bugs, not the actual challenges itself. And I gave up, but my little brother just like decided to make it his life's mission to try and get through it without it crashing, and finally did. It took him,
Nice.
years, but he did it. And
You
I
know,
was like, huh, okay.
but that's an experience all its own, though. Like the version of XCOM Enemy Unknown for the PlayStation Vita is so hilariously buggy that it just creates its own kind of its own little ecosystem that just you don't get on the better versions. Like if you just nudge the thumbstick real fast, you can aim a grenade straight through a wall. If you throw a grenade, there's a solid 50-50 chance that unit is permanently becoming part of the terrain. Like it's certainly an experience. I love that version unironically because of the weird stupid stuff that happens. Uh
I am sympathetic though. Like, I remember having to program games for like computer science, right? And you would hit these cases where it was like you I couldn't print the last pixel writing it in assembly. If I did it, it messed up the screen. And so I ended up adding features to try and hide that because like I couldn't figure out the bug, right? You have a huge project due, and I'm like, oh no, I can't figure out the bug. So I would just add features. So I put a little scorecard down there to make it look like the missing pixel was part of the score. And I had another bug that would let you walk through walls, and I turned that into a feature, like a ghost power-up mode you would get once I figured it out. So like I ended up with like extra credit on an assignment because I couldn't figure out how to make the last pixel print on the game. I'm like, I'm throwing in special features and maybe people won't notice. And I saw him marking people off for it. I guess he just never noticed that my little scorecard down there was to hide that missing pixel.
well, no, that's perfect. Just makes it more fun.
Really appreciated ghost mode. I'm like, good. Please don't look too closely at the code. Whatever people who figured out how to print that pixel did, I did not figure it out.
It's a new feature, but still, you get cool stuff as a result. Gotta love that stuff.
Yeah, it made me appreciate how hard game programming is, though. Every time I see someone complain where they're like,
Oh, sorry.
oh, there's a bug in like an MMORPG, I can't believe somebody didn't take 5 minutes to fix this. It's just like, no, I've never met a bug that made it live that wasn't really weird to fix, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
it's never as easy as it looks.
yeah. There's always something oddly specific to it. Like I like one game I love talking about a lot was RuneScape there. Like they specifically had one bug that's just infamous at this point where it just allowed people to kill each other in safe zones. So they were all excited about the new housing skill and whatever else that came out. Well, construction, but housing sounds better. And there was a bug with one of the mini games, specifically if somebody got kicked out of their house in a particular way, that resulted in a guy basically just being able to go all serial killer on an entire town. That caused so many issues that there's even a statue commemorating it in the game at this point. But yeah, you gotta love that stuff. Like it's always something unbelievably oddly specific, and people think it's easy. Like why didn't they just
Yeah.
fix it?
And sometimes you look at it and you just kind of know, like Ogre Battle 64, right? The infinite item glitch. There's just that moment where you see the number that's causing it, and you're like, oh, it's an int overflow error. It's like, I've probably made those before. Kudos to whoever figured out how to break that, but it's like, oh, I see what happened here.
Or like the free skills in FFT and stuff like that.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's
I forgot about that one.
yeah, it's still in speedruns to this day, I believe. Just free skills all day. But I mean, it even if it's a common bug, you can't test for the entire encyclopedia at once. Like there's only so much
Yeah.
time, only so much means, and only so many people. So
Though I don't know, I feel like there are specific personalities that you kind of want to give your game to. Like, I love Fell Seal, but if you were playing that game and you were like, oh, I figured out how to hack a two-handed crossbow and shield together. Oh no, the bug has been fixed or like stuff like that. A lot of that I think was just me reporting bugs after it released, like the weirdest bugs, because at a certain point your mindset after speedrunning is like, huh, I wonder if I wonder if I can break this, right? And the answer was sometimes, but they were very good with the patches. So
Yeah, that's a,
sorry, anyone running a two-handed crossbow plus shield build. That was me.
oh, but the auto crossbow builds are too much fun. Dude, I love the auto crossbow in that game. It's just something about AoE, just turn anything into a dragon breath move from KOL is just too fun.
Really, yeah. Pretty much every item added from the missions and monsters expansion was like exploring what it means to have like fun items in a tactical RPG because none of them were stronger, right? Like they were all technically optional, but they always did something weird and fun. And that made it, I don't know, I definitely tell people who are trying it out to do the expansion first just to get the weird items for that one.
Yeah, I mean, like the mini halberd. It's like here we combined a spear and we've combined a an axe. Just figure out what you want to do with this, and it's cool. You know, just like it opens up new categories for different unit types. It's nice.
I think the only problem with playing it with the expansion would be that they really the monsters were kind of planned in such a way that they work really well, like the Phoenix, right? Has a lot of like gives itself rebirth, explodes, right? That kind of mechanic. And giving the monsters classes means that every Phoenix did not feel like, I don't know, a terror, right? You're always happy when one didn't have rebirth.
Oh yeah, like the monsters were a little funky for balance for sure. Like, good lord, that on challenge runs, that dog map at the very start is the what the hell is it? Not the lake, but the kind of like prairie section right before where you run into your first little treasure goblin there. Like that map is a
Yeah.
nightmare on challenge runs. It's like, hey, guess what? You remember how you let them all spawn in with new stuff? Guess what? Guess who's multi-class and outnumbering you like 2 to 1? uh,
I did find like I did a lot of monster challenge runs for Fell Seal, and you could really tell like if you ran all Kawas, one, that's a blast. But it would start out hard because every monster has an elemental weakness and every mage has like each of the elements on it, right? So if you're running all Kawas, despite being turtles, they explode if you hit them with water. So the early game is always like ridiculously hard because one water mage or one of those jellyfish things could like wipe out your entire army. But then you get water resist necklaces. It's like, okay, now I'm playing the game normally. And then you would hit the late game and things would just get ridiculous, right? Like if you have 8 Kawas, you can knock anyone off a cliff into water if you have 8 boomerangs, right?
no, so I was also kind of chuckling for a second there, like, well, secretly the weakness to water is a reference to pistol shrimp. Um,
Oh,
oh, I'm sure it isn't. I'm just saying. I don't know. That was just the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, no, it for sure, for sure. Like it felt like they were definitely going for more like this would be fun more so than like this is perfectly balanced, which personally I think is the better way to go anyway. Um,
right. Yeah, and it made the challenge, all monster challenge runs, pretty fun. Like there's no way to remove debuffs, but that adds challenge as the game gets easier. I do end up abandoning the challenge runs later on when they get too easy. Like if you play all dragons, that counter that hits the enemy with 2 debuffs, like that adds up a little too fast. And the little catfish creatures, the fact that like every time you hit one for 100 damage, they throw knives that deal damage to the enemy team, adding up to 100. Like at some point, those little abilities on some of the new monsters became a little too strong if you're running, 12 catfish.
or the infamous just all Phoenix approach.
Oh geez, I did not try that. It seemed like it would be maybe too strong. The
What's
fact you can
funny,
sacrifice one to heal everyone and then they get back up again.
like it's basically unstoppable with the exception of a couple maps where there's a bunch of stuff with fire absorption, in which case it does nothing. it's the way that
Oh, that's true.
I- it's what I tried to do my first playthrough with the Switch version. It was this bizarre kind of thing where early on was just getting completely dunked on by the new monster units. So that's actually where the whole like auto crossbow obsession came from, because at that point I was like, okay, you know what, this is like these things just keeps just showing up and kicking my ass at every corner. So I like war mage crossbow just auto fire on everything. I just need more stuff hitting in more directions at once, right? So that was pretty darn fun. Then I was thinking, what if we just set fire to the entire map? And that's when I found that when I finally ran into that map with the early phoenixes you were talking about, one of the hunt missions there. So
Yeah.
it started off with a snowball of just those, and then combining in with was it? I think it was not the sorcerer. What's the other map wide hitter? I can never keep the names of the classes in that game straight.
Summoner, evoker, vessel. Vessel,
Vessel,
is that
that's right.
it?
Or no, 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 not the vessel. Maybe it was Evoker. I don't know. Anyway, actually, maybe it was Sorcerer. Maybe I'm just yeah. I think it was actually Sorcerer. Now that I think about it, sorry, I'm thinking the hat, like the friggin'
I
like
am.
building on
I
their
am
head.
thinking of that too.
It just reminds me of just like one of those one of them like ancient temple looking situations. Um, but no, so after seeing that whole thing, it just became a complete curb stomp until it got to that one like final temple you're supposed to go through to go get all your marked stuff. And there's two units in there that have fire absorption, and they could just body the entire party. Everything else would be dead, but they would gladly take on those two because all they had were fire attacks. Uh, but
Oh man, that's a good game.
dang right, love that game.
And every time you come across the mechanics and you think, can these mix or not? The answer is yes. Like if you're like, oh, you have like a healer, a Sylvan Dragon, where your auto attack, heals and puts a heal over time on allies, right? Like, does that work with breath attack, where the melee attack of a dragon becomes a breath attack that grows every turn they don't attack? And the answer is like, yeah, it does work. You do end up with healing breath, right?
Yeah, the I think the perfect description was there was this one description from Yahtzee Croshaw forever ago. It was like it's the kind of half drunk, unattentive camp counselor that just decides, you know what, let's just go ahead and let you see what happens, little Timmy. So just go for it and see what happens. Paraphrasing a bit, but yeah.
I can't wait to see what they do next.
There,
I mean, I can't believe that Fell Seal happened and was like a two-person team basically, but they are definitely very creative with game mechanics in a way that, I mean, Fell Seal from a class perspective is kind of better than Final Fantasy Tactics. I know that's kind of blasphemy, but like
it's true
the
though.
knight felt a little weird, and like the archer and the dragoon, like the skills they got were not very interesting, right? Like nothing in Fell Seal is uninteresting. Like every class does something weird, and you can't say that about Final Fantasy Tactics as much as like I love that game a lot, right? Like you don't get the same kind of synergies.
Yeah, like probably one of the most dull runs you could ever do is a knight SCC. Or not Knight, Archer SCC, sorry.
Oh
Where
man.
it's just like, okay, time to set up those charge shots and hope we somehow finish the objective before everyone dies yet again. Or just use
I
speed
did
save
feel like
over
they
and
were
over.
punishing archers for
Uh,
Tactics Ogre, like
Kinda,
and
yeah.
timing spells weirdly.
And they forgot to give that one archer his bow even. Like, you know what, you don't even get to fire. Screw this one guy in order specifically. But but yeah, no, it just felt like they ended up building on a lot of stuff that FFT tried, and that's the best kind of stuff from indies. That's why I was saying that you really needed to try Kingsbane there, um, which basically did a very similar thing with a very random selection of different things. Like normally you'd think like Ultima, okay, it's primarily about the story. You're just going around interacting with the world and whatever else. If you think like something like Golden Sun, it's more about its kind of like different class builds and whatever else. You know, you get different powers for giving people different combinations of your little pocket Pokemon dealies. Or or something like Tactics Ogre would obviously be a bit more direct combat, or something like FFT would be a bit more about your class builds, and then it's just like let's just throw all that in a blender. Like you're still in the environment as if it was an Ultima game. Like fights just happen wherever you happen to be in the world. Something like Golden Sun essentially coming in with the like you can interact with all of the environment and just move stuff around. They can just build entire friggin' kill zones for enemy squads and whatever. You've got like challenge modes showing up in that one. You've got interesting mixes of mechanics. Like I love the fact that you could stack so many things in that one. It actually was a very fell seal feeling of just like if something feels like it should combine, it totally does. Like uh, like I was looking at some of the skills, and it's like, well, if I put counterattack on somebody and I give them a shield in their primary hand, they counter push with it. Okay, pretty cool. So what happens if I use the counter push skill, which just does that with a normal weapon, and he just like knocks the thing back multiple tiles? It's like, oh, so you're saying cliff drops from a mile away, huh? And sure enough, if there's a boss fight with a cliff drop, you can throw the boss off a cliff, and you can even go explore an area entirely behind where that was, and even find their remains later. Like it just, I love that the indie scene gets the option to do stuff like that. Uh,
Have you had any indies that have tried to take Legend of Mana's crafting system and make it a little more intuitive? Like we had Fell Seal, right? Did a great with the Final Fantasy Tactics class system. 20XX kind of took Mega Man and did the same thing, right? But I don't know if I've seen anything that felt like Legend of Mana. And it feels like for all the time people have put into the Legend of Mana test kitchen, like somebody should just make a new game, right?
Test
Like
kitchen.
take that amazing system and make it intuitive.
Yeah, I feel like somebody did bring something like that up. I don't remember what it was. It's a little hard to keep track of some of these indies sometimes, to be honest. Um, but yeah, no, there. I don't know. I feel like there was something. I'm just blanking on it right now. Hmm. I don't know. I'm
Would
gonna
you
have
kind
to
of
get
be
back to you on that
okay
one.
with Legend of Mana system if there was something to do with the weapons you could make, right? Like it is so easy to make a sword that will one shot the boss of the game on the hardest difficulty, right? Like it really needed weird optional challenge content. Something to do with all that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of indies kind of sort of explore that concept, like what I was saying earlier on, like specific. Obviously, there's a lot of things that that developer that I was talking about, the Kingsbane's developer there, is they've done a lot of different projects, and I actually think it might have been Horizons Gate that maybe did something very similar. I think that might have been the
Okay.
one I'm thinking of. That was one of their other projects because typically what they've done is essentially take that same kind of engine and then just do something weird with it every time. Like with how you have something like a quip change in FFT, they had you kind of reused that as a skill in something like Horizon's Gate, and then they switched it over to an item that you could equip in something like Kingsbane there, where like say on a technical level you need to reload a crossbow every time you fire it, but with something like a bandolier, you sacrifice an accessory slot to essentially just keep multiple crossbows holstered on you at all times. So just like fire each one of them once, and then you got other ones that'll like be like a two-handed crossbow that you can equip with melee skills and stuff like that. Um,
Okay.
like they've done a lot of weirdly specific mechanics, and it's basically a one-person studio, so they just kind of get free reign to do whatever the hell they want. Um, but yeah, no, it. So again, I think it was that one that I'm thinking of that tried something similar to that because they had like a boat mechanic. They had some kind of like custom unit building mechanic and such. Um, they had a lot of different stuff. Um, but yeah,
Keep
so
an eye out for it because I would love that.
yeah, it's again they're a really impressive developer for pulling off a lot of that stuff. Um, and actually, speaking of just interesting interactions and mix-ups and everything else, one of the other developers that's been working on a lot of things. There was I think I recommended Monster Sanctuary too, right?
Yeah, yeah, you did.
Yeah, like there. So for those that hadn't seen it, like their original idea was basically like what if Pokemon, but also what if team battles all the time, but what if Castlevania, basically. Um, so like, you need to get up to that cliff, you just go use your Pidgey, or you need to go burn that thing down, go get your lizard, or you want to win in PvP, you use the lizard with the spear, and it's hilarious how dominant that thing is. But um, and surprisingly, there's like challenge modes and like PvP modes and whatever else in that game. It's kind of nuts how far they went with it. But they've actually been working on another one now that that apparently they just decided to make a roguelike of a similar idea. Um, so
Okay.
either way, there's another one that's kind of doing stuff. The reason that I was mentioning this was specifically something like Team 17, the one that they've typically been doing stuff with, as far as I can tell. I don't even know if you'd count that as an indie because they are a bigger studio that's been around for a while, but they do a lot of interesting stuff with oddly specific things. Um, let me go look up their catalog real quick. There was one in particular I was meaning to bring up. Let me see what it was called.
Yeah, I've seen kind of a blurring of the line between indie and sort of a just a normal publisher, right? Like even in the book space, we hear people who are like, "Oh, it's a self-publisher, a small indie press, and it's like $25 million in sales after it grows," and you're like, I don't think that's indie anymore. Like I think we've hit a point where that's not an indie publisher. Like it's just a publisher.
Yeah, and the only reason that I mention it is because it's technically a bigger publisher at this point, but so much of their stuff has been firmly in that category of just like we exclusively do weird shit all the time. Like there's nothing standard in their catalog as far as I can tell. Like even looking through it now, there's even more than I ever expected on here. There's literally 18 pages worth of games on here and nothing looks normal. I was like, I thought this
I
would be
guess
easy
it's
to find.
capturing that indie ethos, right? That creativity, that
Jeez, what the hell? Autopsy
innovation, or just
Simulator?
weirdness.
Sorry, they had something on here called Autopsy Simulator,
Oh no.
right?
Oh, I hope it's a tactical RPG.
I mean, basically, that's what would you count the Escapists as? Like that definitely has that indie feel, but it definitely has more of a budget. Where it's like, let's just make a sort of RPG kind of thing out of a jailbreak. Uh,
That's true. Well, even Hades kind of feels indie, but with AAA polish, right?
oh, for sure.
Hades is a good example of a game that had a very specific vision in just like 100 out of 100, every single thing they tried was perfect. But as much as I enjoy it, like it's Legend of Mana Reborn that has a few flaws but was more ambitious, right? I enjoyed both games, but like Hades is just perfect, but slightly less enjoyable for me than, I don't know, a beautiful mess.
Oh yeah. No, I hear you. Like, favorite RTS game of all time was probably one of the worst balanced things I've ever seen. There was this absolutely bizarre game from ages ago. That's Empire's Dawn of the Modern World. Have you ever heard of it by any chance?
No, no, I haven't.
Okay, believe it or not, same people that made Empire Earth, which is typically a more well-known one, and kind of a similar. Actually, was it? No, I think it was them. I mean, they're a defunct studio at this point, one way or the other. Um, but basically, what it was like, let's take the RTS thing, kind of do the Age of Empires thing of you got to like age up over time, except you're going straight from like medieval Europe, straight into World War II and just everything in between, however it happens, happens. So you had weird nonsense like the fact that Korean bombard cannons had vastly more range than stuff like howitzers from World War II. You literally could
Wow.
out bomb bombers flying out of airports with your Korean howitzers or bombard cannons. You had nonsense like, the one edge lord guy shows up into the lobby and is like, well, showed up, spent all his resources on friggin' like, Germany and tiger tanks and whatever else. And it's like, well, you see, technically, these swordsmen over here will automatically kill something at half health, and a tank at half health is still a tank at half health. So a couple of anti tank guns, some some two-hander warriors. I think we're good to go.
Oh,
Like it was a total mess, but it was hilarious. Oh, I love that game. It doesn't want to run on anything these days, but it was just a beautiful mess. Uh,
oh man. I'm all there for swordsmen taking down tanks.
yeah, it was hilariously wonderful. Um, like hell, there was a you hear jokes every now and then about games having a particular bias. Whether it's your StarCraft Korea bias or whether it's your Russia bias off of War Thunder. In that case, it was like the hardest Korea bias you've ever seen. It was like, would you like to use the Soviet Union over here with their soldiers who have less health than their villagers? Or would you like to use these medieval Koreans over here who can basically double their attack speed at any time? They get a veteran bonus for getting more kills. They cost the same amount. And also, they just can heal because passive healing at all times due to temples and things. Like, one of these is a little better than the others. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, man.
Oh,
Still fun, though. Still fun. Like, you just got to see people make use of dumb mechanics. Like, if somebody was playing as France, their planes were awful, but they would always drop infantry if they were shot down. It's like one time, four of us were playing online, and there was this. We had set up just like this infinite wall of just basically unbreachable defenses on an island, and they couldn't get through. So finally, they just dump all their population into the crappiest planes you can have, specifically to get them all shot down, so that they just drop paratroopers in. They won. We sucked. Anyway. Uh, but yeah. Anyway, I guess we should probably talk about Tactics Ogre at some point too.
yeah. Yeah, we kind of got off topic. That's okay. I don't think you can have the two of us in a conversation without some amount of rambling. I don't think there was ever the plan that it was like, we should be very on topic.
We missed our
We're
talking
not the people
points.
for that.
How are the ratings gonna look?
Uh,
We're losing the 80-year-old demographic.
so I think Resident Arc is a good place to use as a jumping off point because they covered a lot of great things and it was great to bring new people to it. And I love seeing the reaction of someone playing the game and how it made them feel, but they skipped the side quest in Coda, and there is so much world building and just like story moments that I really wish they had gotten to. But I know that's outside their scope, right?
Oh yeah,
They don't do the side quest, but man, I could talk about Coda 2 for hours and the implications, right?
yeah. Personally that what happens with Roderick gets almost no lines, but just the implications alone are just fascinating. It's like you just keep
Yeah,
resetting the
and
timeline, teaching a little more each time.
also like maybe it's just me, but the voice you hear when you fight um Zargalwa and the thing that is supposedly trying to come through after Roderick, like, is that Ashmedai? Is that what we're supposed to understand? Because the preview they gave of Ashmedai for this game, like they did a preview of all the gods, was weird. Like it was like, oh yeah, after the original Ogre Battle, Ashmedai, who led the forces of, Hell, he kind of chilled out and he's nice and if you go near a Chaos Gate, he'll teach you how to cast Bane magic, and it's like, what? Like, what is this? What does that mean? But then we see Roderick and Darkola tempted in there, and we see all these people using Bane magic and spreading out from the Palace of the Dead, and now it kind of has me wondering, like, is the implication in there that Ashmedai has become kind towards humans, like, to lure them to Chaos Gates, or is it that, you know, we see a lot of gates opening in this series, right? Presumably after the original Ogre Battle, nobody was going around opening gates, and now
They got bored.
it's become very common between, Ogre Battle 64 and March of the Black Queen, and I'm like, is that what Bane magic does? Like, if Bane magic slowly lowers the seals um, to the Netherworld, like, you could just sit there teaching people to use it over time until you hit a some inflection point, right?
I mean, I like to think it was the one in lore use of virtuous dance, but I guess that makes sense too.
It could be, but like I think of the seduction of evil in these games, and it's like when you cast Charm, they're invoking Ashmedai's name, which I
True.
thought was interesting, right? I'm like, oh, that's an interesting, I don't know, random quote. That is something I don't like about War of the Lions, is they took out all of the random quotes when you cast spells, but when you hear them in Tactics Ogre, they're kind of world building in and of themselves. And I would love to write those. I mean, it seems like it would be a lot of fun. At first,
That
by the time you hit spell number 400, it's probably terrible.
Yeah, I mean some of them are kind of cringy, but still a lot of them do have a lot of really cool stuff. I mean, on the whole FFT thing, that whole layer upon layer line for haste, I don't know, something about that just hits different. Like to this day, it's one of those ones that always just kind of sticks in mind of like that's just a really cool way to set up haste there. Like I don't know what it is about it, just something about specifically using the word layer in that situation. I don't know,
Yeah,
just works.
I mean, compared, what was the one you always hear quoted though is Heaven's wish to destroy all minds, holy explosion.
It's like, damn, what's going on in heaven?
They're not all winners.
Like, what the hell's heaven up to? Are they talking about outer heaven by any chance? Do we got to worry about we got to worry about Snake? You gonna bring out
When
Metal Gear?
Delita says, blame yourself or God,
Perfect,
that's
absolute
specifically what
perfection.
it means.
Oh man, I love that line. Also, I love that
Oh,
made it into Reborn.
oh, yeah, I mean, I think Reborn also has the perfect mix for Alexandra Smith, where like I love War of the Lions, but some people it was a step too far, right? But like Reborn is elevated language, but um
Yeah,
it's not at the War of the Lions level.
it feels like old English rather than you've taken a trip to the opera. At
Right.
least that's how I see it.
Though I saw someone left a bad review for Reborn, and they're like, the game is full of spelling and grammar errors, and then they listed off all the typos, and they were just real words that that guy didn't know.
Yeah, you
Right?
see some.
Alexander O. Smith has an old English degree, so he's like, you know, Cosner playwright. And the guy's like, oh, he misspelled some other word as Cosner. It's like, no, no, that's a conard. It's like it's an old word for a conard. These are not typos. You just didn't know the.
You know, like, actually, I think I might have seen that guy. Was it the one that also was saying, "Oh, they tried to get around sensitive topics by using the word rapine instead of, the other one"? Was it that guy?
Oh, it might have. I think so. Did they mention alarum also?
I think so. Yeah. They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
what's a gowl? They can't spell jail." Like, my man, the hell genre are you in?
I know. How did you end up here on fantasy?
Yeah, you see some big brain takes in those reviews. I've been tempted on so many occasions to just go through those, and on a couple of times I've tried, like, this sounds really mean. Like, I'm gonna have to delete this one and try again in another month. And so it's been for a year. Uh, but yeah, you see some bizarro takes on there.
I
Uh,
have been sad that it has kept some people from playing the game. Like the idea that it's a remaster and not kind of a remake almost, like kept a lot of the veterans from playing it for about a year, but they came in eventually, right? But I've seen
yeah,
new players who are like, oh, it's not rated well, and they're like, I'd rather play the best tactical RPG out there. And it's like, well,
define
that's it, right?
best.
And these people have like the cognitive dissonance where it's like they want to play the best, but the best isn't rated the best. But then when they ask, like, should I play Triangle Strategy or Tactics Ogre? Everyone is like, play Tactics Ogre, and they're like, but it's rated lower than Triangle Strategy, right? Like, the whole star rating
Well,
culture has kind of
Well,
burned people.
it's just like you'll end up seeing way better ratings for, friggin' Teletubbies than you will for for friggin' Witcher or whatnot, which granted, I don't know how the better Witcher type or the later Witcher ones went, but I know the first season was pretty freaking solid. Um,
Yeah,
but like still, it's like it's the same general mindset of like this is rated better, but like you see some of the posts coming up on the Reddit for that one, and it's like little kids who just experienced their first fantasy story, and they're like, "This is the greatest thing anyone's ever made ever." Oh, I feel so bad even disagreeing with this right now because you must be 5, man.
And I don't want anyone to just like triangle strategy. I mean, if you like it, that's great. And I haven't played the new ending,
You really didn't miss
so
much.
I've kind of been okay. Well, I'm like, I don't feel like I can say, I don't feel like I can continue being mean to it until I play it. But also, like, man, I have sat through hours of conversations and triangle strategy. I don't think I can do it again.
Yeah, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Like the I always joke about the fact that like they feel like you're gonna forget about the stuff that was going on, so they will repeatedly like tell you somebody's role and somebody like how they're feeling and whatever else. It's like just in case you forgot from 5 minutes ago, here's my job, here's my background, here's what I had for lunch today. Like, oh my God, I don't care. Just say you don't like them and move on.
I feel like
Uh,
there's so much good in that. Like, there's so much good in triangle strategy in terms of like level design and character kind of balance. Like those all felt pretty good.
they did.
But then like when it fell down on the story and the voice acting and the dialogue and the setup was okay, right? Like the salt and the iron. But
Yeah,
then like the actual storytelling beats, they were so bad. And they didn't have to be. Like
yeah.
there is a good story you can make out of that. But
Like
you hit the end and have to make the choice, and all the choices are terrible. And Benedict is just like evil to be hilariously evil, and Roland is just like so dumb, right?
it's like,
Like
what if
it's
we gave
so
up,
bad.
guys? But they're just selling us Girl Scout cookies. But what if we surrendered, though?
Like we've got them on the ropes. Let's put it to a vote. Benedict. I think we should kill Roland. Roland. That sounds great to me. No, Roland. Please stop. Stop living
Please,
against your
yes,
messenger.
I agree. You know what? Let's go for it. Get this guy out of here. But yeah,
It's
no,
just I guess
it's
what
baffling.
would change it for me with a better writer is the idea is like utility versus freedom versus morality, but it puts forth the worst version of every argument where I'm like, actually the best version of both of those arguments would be really interesting to see conflicting. Instead, it's like, what if I sold my people into religious slavery? And you're like, that's not the best choice. That's what are you doing? What? Who wrote that?
I was bored, accidentally genocide, I guess.
I know. It's like I don't you had everything you needed to finish it, but I don't know. They just did not crawl across the finish line. And
I felt like,
you hear people who are like, "There's never been a game like this," and it's like,
yeah,
yeah,
there
there was.
was.
It was Jean d'Arc. Like,
Yeah,
it was. It was actually very popular. We've all forgotten Jean d'Arc, but it
I've
was
been loving
good. It
it.
was exactly this. It just,
Yeah, I mean, I
I
slept on Jean d'Arc for so freaking long, and I've been loving going through that one.
yeah, I haven't replayed it um in a long time. And but I just kept thinking like, man, I don't mind the Jean d'Arc style of game where like you don't really have like classes, like every character is just a character. If it's done well, and like the character part of Triangle Strategy is pretty good. I don't think Sarah felt that way watching me play it because like you deploy Jean and it's like, oh my gosh, I get a ladder. And he's just like, I don't, why are you excited about a ladder? I'm like, it
Don't
is exciting
understand.
to have a ladder.
It opens the map. Yeah, I mean, hell, I felt that way in Triangle when you get ladder guy, and it's like, but also I'm better off just not having a ladder now that I think about it, because they could use the ladder too. Like, or I can just
I
use
do
that same.
appreciate how many archers they had in Triangle Strategy also.
True, true. I,
Sometimes I feel like something is trying to cater to me, but like in a way that I understand the rest of the world doesn't really want, where it's like, you should just keep giving me like random giant birds and archers. We can do that. And I'm like,
speaking of,
but does the rest of the audience want that? Does
speaking of,
anyone else want
what's
that?
What's your take on the bird army there? Like specifically the bird army they keep talking up and never really shows up outside of just like, here's dude on chicken with sword.
Yeah, that was one. It's weird, right? Like if you're writing, I mean, so what's her name? Hawkette. I forget her name. Hewitt
Hewitt.
on the hawk. Right, like she makes sense, right? Like she is
Yeah.
on a bird with a bow. But then you get like Lord Falcon Punch, who rides his bird into melee range to hit you with a shield.
To be fair,
And I'm like,
very badass design. I wish they would have done more
it
with
is
him. I
like
respect his gist.
his badassness comes from the fact that you can become a legend doing that, right? You're doing it all wrong and succeeding. That's
like
kind of admirable.
like as soon as I saw that guy, I'm like, this is the kind of dumb bullshit I can get behind. But yeah, then they're like, he has PTSD, and then I guess he doesn't. Like, what kind of story is that? Uh,
Uh, uh, you know. So, anyways, yeah, don't pay $65 for Triangle Strategy. Pay $5 for Fell Seal.
damn right. $8 with the DLC. Oh, yeah. It's super weird how that never price drops either. Like they hold it up as this big premium thing. Like I don't know, guy. Like it seems
And
like y'all
the
gave up on it.
conversation would become hard if it were flipped, right? Like if the conversation was, should you spend $60 for Fell Seal or $5 for Triangle Strategy? Now you're like, what's your budget?
Yeah.
Like,
Now there's an actual argument to be made. But
oh, man.
hmm. But
But
like that.
yeah, so
Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, bringing us back to Tactics Ogre Reborn. Things that they didn't cover. One, Coda, House of the Dead. Um, I I think so. Something that bothered me a lot and let us clean together was, and this is not a problem with the game; it's a problem with me. I thought the Coda was just like DLC in a Disgaea sense, where it's like, oh, here's a random fluff mission and you get a character, right? I didn't realize that like there's kind of a huge expansive ending that happens after each Coda, and even if like Coda 3 and 4 aren't canon, Matsuno's implication that what really happens is kind of a mixture of a mixture of all the routes plus extra content almost makes it sound like he wants Lancelot folded into it, right? That whatever the canonical version of Reborn for other games is, it could include Lancelot getting better again, even if Coda 3 and Coda 4 didn't hit. And so I'm mad at myself that in 2011 I didn't do Coda 3 and 4 because, like, I feel like the ending needs the Coda 4 bit to it that plays afterwards, right?
Yeah, they probably should have kind of ended the final cutscene with like a few weeks prior, and then it goes straight into Coda. Instead of making you walk into the cutscene, like it probably would have been a smoother transition to just kind of let you know like there's more going on for sure.
Yeah.
And for that matter, actually, there was an interesting thing that I want to get your take on that Ivan had brought up during the podcast there. So with Warren, apparently they said that he never came back in March of the Black Queen. So canonically, he's confirmed to be alive now. He's also confirmed to never have come back. Which one wins?
Yeah. So what happens is he's on the boat on his way back, and then he falls in love, and they run off together before the boat arrives there. So that's my take on it, is that
Ah,
Warren
Barbara
finally
comes
found
back. I
love.
see.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember that comment about Lancelot and Warren never returning.
Truth be told,
But
me neither.
I don't.
But
I could have missed it, or it could have been I think he might have said it was the world ending and not the A plus ending. So like when I replayed March of the Black Queen, I got the A plus ending, which like you know how there was this idea that like Ogre Battle 64, it's not Matsuno, it's just like some crazy guy's idea. but like replaying it and seeing that the A plus ending is like, okay, guys, now Destin, Debonair, Gilbert, Aisha, and Saradin are going to go into Palatinus, a vassal state of Lotus, and help them and, help free the Volmakans. And I'm like, well, hold on. Like, if that was Matsuno's A plus ending in March of the Black Queen, like, that is what happens in Ogre Battle 64. Like,
I mean, to an
you need to tell
extent,
that's not his intent.
because they like in that case they succeeded in a way lower scale because they only got that out of there. To an
Right.
extent, we saved one guy. It's more than zero.
That's true. And like I think the real critique there is that Matsuno does something entirely new. Ogre Battle 64 feels like autocorrect, right? It is only taking immediately what came before and building on it. It's not giving new starting points. And I think that's probably a more fair critique of the games that didn't have Matsuno's involvement, right?
Yeah, it.
Uh,
Now that you mention it, that's actually kind of an interesting thing. That yeah, the that OB64 is one of the few that does feel like it just sort of definitively ends there to an extent. Um, at least for most of the endings that I've gotten. Obviously, have not played that much as much as some of the other ones, but no, every ending I've seen definitely felt like this is actually the end of the story here.
well, yeah, so for Ogre Battle 64, like it sets up Lotus and I didn't realize this until last time you played, but you're only in like the very southern reach of Nerdum, or Neildom, I guess is the Reborn translation, the Balmakan country. So
It's a
it kind of
nerd
ends
land.
with like your armies moving into Neildom directly, right? So that always felt like it would be the next place. As far as like would it be canonical that Lancelot and Warren never come back? Like, I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Like, we talk about the endings as if like an ending for March of the Black Queen is canonical, and that's not true, right? Like,
True.
now might be a great time to talk about Brynhildr, right? Like, if the A plus ending is true, then we gave Brynhildr back to the angels, and you know, Fenrir is up there in heaven, but like if that were true, they couldn't steal Brunhilde and have the entire plot of Reborn, right?
And for that matter, if
So
Coda 4 is true, how do I have four Brunhilders? What now, atheists?
that's true. We as humans we think Brunhilde is important, but like up in heaven, they've got like 20 other things, right? Like that's
They're
not their
just
problem.
churning them
Like
out.
us.
You,
But yeah, so I don't know that we can look at any one. I don't think any route in any ending is 100% canonical in the game. You're just sort of piecing it together by what comes after, right?
true.
So I don't know that we're really beholden to the idea that Lancelot and Warren didn't make it. Um, I mean, I think we think Coda 3 and 4, not canonical, right? But like Coda 2, maybe? Like it could be?
I mean, truth be told, what I would love more than anything is to see Ogre Battle 8, except they just decide at the last minute to just branch it off the Night of Lotus B route. Like none of that happened. He's just looking. He's like flipping through a book, looking through alternate timelines. Like, okay, that Doom timeline, we completely died over there. This is the only way that we're getting this done. Don't overthrow the Lotus government. Go with Eleanor. Go hop in our jet fighter. uh,
Yeah, you do Coda 5, where instead of going back to Goliath, you go back to Knight of Lotus and convince Alphonse to save his girlfriend.
it's like, so hear me out. Less genocide, more getting laid. What do you think?
It is sad though. Like, I mean, it's sad, but I guess interesting that like the good ending for Knight of Lotus is definitely not canonical because we're like, well, the A plus ending for March of the Black Queen feels best. The A plus ending for most of these feels best, right?
Yeah,
But
and
I don't know. Maybe that's wrong. Do we want to say Law is the A plus? Like,
I mean,
Vice survives, but
Is
What,
that a
Ryan?
good thing though? That feels like a
I
downside. Like it just
well,
feels like everybody's got less potential to be stabbed in the back if he's gone.
I don't know. A reality without chaos or neutral vice. That's something to dream for.
Like I just feel like if he doesn't end up making it, it just it feels like everybody would feel a bit more cozy. It's like, you know what? Maybe we don't need specifically to complete Codas 3 and 4. Actually, come to think of it, with 3 and 4 as being non-canon, then he technically wouldn't be required, which would mean that I kind of feel like any one of those could still be canon. Like
Yeah.
he wouldn't have to make it for sure. I mean, he's not required for anything other than 3 and 4, and it just feels like almost a bit of a weird paradox that he survives. At least that's kind of how I read it.
I would, yeah, I'd love to know what they choose. I'll bet Matsuno has not decided this. I bet if he gets hired to make a new game and it becomes relevant, he'll make the decision then. Right now, it's, Schrodinger's cat, I guess. But
I just like
I
to
would love
imagine.
to know.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I like to imagine he just like carries a friggin' D20 with him at all times. He just has endings planned out for every one of them. Like he just pulls it out of his pocket, like, okay, I was ready for this years ago. Just throws it out, and it looks like the Belmonkins are winning the Ogre Battle too. uh,
Man, it is sad that we don't have more games in that series. I don't know how he feels specifically about Ogre Battle 64. I imagine he doesn't seem keen on Night of Lotus particularly, but like I am glad we have them. Like if the alternative is to only have two games, I'd rather have more games without him, but I would love to see him come back and just like finish the story.
yeah, few folks can write politics like he does. It's kind of nuts. Um, like
Yeah,
it's just rare to see that done. Like if as weird as it sounds, the only thing that comes to mind as far as like who I'd want, there's pretty much only one other person I'd want to see writing politics as well, and that'd be like Chris Avallone. Uh,
I
that's
don't
uh,
know who that is.
that's the Fallout and New Vegas guy. He's like,
Gotcha.
in my mind, it would be a bit weird to say that they're like the Western Matsuno, but like a lot of the reasons that I love something like New Vegas are a lot of the same reasons I love Tactics Ogre. It's just like every rock you turn over, there's just more implications, more details to everything than in most cases folks would not give the slightest crap about. Um, like just the fact that if one person doesn't like you here, they might just not share information over here. Like the story will completely adapt if this guy decided to get pissed off at you, wandered off, and got eaten by a friggin' dinosaur. Like just has something new that plays out every time that you play through. Just a lot of focus on politics and emergent narrative and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I'll cover that one
Good
at
to
some
see.
point. Just at the very least, share it because there's a lot of shared interestingness there. I feel.
I wonder what the so something else I consider a lot is like political fantasy is kind of a genre that has come into prominence ever since Game of Thrones, right? I see a lot of comparisons to Game of Thrones here, but
Yeah,
I always kind of wonder what book series would fans of this want to go on and read. And I
Wheel of
kind of
Fate
lean
or Wheel of
towards like,
Time.
yeah, maybe. I actually haven't read Wheel of Time. I know that's kind of terrible to admit.
Oh, I've only read
Somehow
some
I
of it.
just
I have no idea what the actual overall canon is because I literally just had one random one that I picked up at a garage sale at some point. I was like, wow, this looks pretty cool. I have no idea what's going on, but man, it's well written. Um, and then never managed to actually finish it before a whole bunch of life stuff caused that entire bookshelf to disappear. Um, long freaking story as
oh,
far as that goes, but like either way, I've heard a lot of stuff secondhand, so just have this completely bizarre version of what that story is, but it sounds like it goes a lot of the same directions there.
I'd love to see. I mean, I need like I don't know, video game magazines to run articles in the best things to read after playing it. My vote would probably be the Dandelion Dynasty. That's The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. It feels like March of the Black Queen, and I mean that like as a compliment, right? Like high fantasy epic politics taking place over islands and betrayals and large scale with a huge cast, but like also as an insult where it's like March of the Black Queen maybe needed a little more character development, right?
Yeah.
It's a good series. It just I think Reborn and War of the Lions is kind of the sweet spot for Matsuno.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they were just sort of doing whatever they could at the time. It kind of felt like they maybe had more ideas in mind, but they just it's like you can only fit so much on a SNES cart. Though,
Yeah, well, we saw that with like Ravnus and Ozma, right? Like
yeah,
characters planned to be there, and then they just didn't have space.
or in a lot of those cases where you ran into end game weapons and it kind of felt like placeholders are like, here's this cool lore behind this weapon. It's like two damage difference from a boulder spear. Um, but like,
I do
okay,
enjoy reading the descriptions of some of these weapons, and I'm like, you know, or like Sancheon, right? Like the mace that Barbas has. It's like the weapon wielded by the demon Gulf in March of the Black Queen, and we're like, how did that happen? How did he get it?
I
Like,
just
did
found
he
it in a
buy it?
dumpster. But
Like, is there an actual lore connection, or was just like somebody had to fill in the alt text for this item?
I love the brimstone bow personally. It's just like, oh, like here's this bow that fires explosive arrows. Like it's literally Rambo's bow. It does slightly more damage versus people. But
I like seeing the items show up in like all the games too, where it's like Volcatus wielded by the, Dark Knight Balzaphon, legendary item, and then you're in Ogre Battle 64 and it's like a shop item. Some guy will sell you as many as you want.
it's like, check it out. We had a bunch of these. We bought them at bulk discount. Uh,
Yeah. You want a pair of Oakleys with that for $10?
yeah, I mean, I'm reading the Reborn description of that exact spear because I was mousing over him at the time. It's like the legendary spear was discovered on Mount Volcana. Like, you just called it Mountain Volcano, really? Check it out,
It's like
guys. I
when
just
they
pulled it
named
out
it
of
like
here.
Pier Hill, right? All the words for hill and like European languages, they just keep stringing them together. Same thing. Not volcanoes.
Uh,
I
yeah, I
will
mean,
say that that is another aspect of luck that I did kind of like is that the Dark Knight weapons were used to be reforged into stronger weapons, and like the descriptions are still there, but there was something to taking like glam rock and evil dark acts of Oz and changing it into like Stardust, obviously a reference to David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust glam rock persona, right? And making it a holy axe. Same thing with like Ignis and Volcatus. Like we did lose some of that in Reborn. The
though
game,
I will say one note on that though. On the balance side of things, which granted these games were never meant to be balanced, but like specifically Volcatus Ignis was the biggest middle finger to anyone that decided to turn their Rune Fencer fire element.
yeah,
uh,
that's
like
true.
it's like,
Like
man,
from a gameplay perspective, it's a lot more fun in Reborn. Like I did not want to have to, I didn't want to have to farm Dark Knight weapons for crafting.
it's like the absolute. Okay, so the only reason I mentioned it is because literally I had one playthrough. I was like, you know what, we're gonna have fire and ice, Valkyrie and Rune Fencer over here. They're gonna be my combo. And keep going like, okay, I found a Bentiska for my ice guy. Fantastic. Okay, ice guy's getting stuff. They're all doing stuff. Like, where's a fire spear? Like, I didn't want to look up a guide or anything. Like, I'm sure there's a fire spear at some point. It's like we get the divine spear, we get the earth spear, we get the lightning spear. Like, at some point, this fire spear is coming, right? Like, no, we still keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, oh, great, we can make we can go make the Ignis. You need the Volcatus. Where do we get the Volcatus? End of chapter 4. Like, okay, fuck you too. uh,
The
anyway,
games are all kind of like that though sometimes, where like I mean, I didn't realize it until I did the all women run of Ogre Battle 64, but like there are some weapons you just don't get. And then there's some weapons where it's like, I hope you like one-handed swords. Like, get ready for all the one-handed swords.
True. There's like divine everything for PSP locked.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Where it's like, here's all of the debuffs that you could possibly want on longbows on like Tactics Ogre SNES. It's like, hope you like
Yeah.
petrification and silence and stun. Well, actually, come to think of it, there was also the crossbow situation on Knight of Lotus. Just like half the crossbows aren't even available in the main game.
Oh yeah. Night of the Lotus was I that was an interesting game, and I hope we see people go from Reborn to that. It sounds like when people talk about it for Resonant Arc or things like that, right? Like it does sound like players want to play it. Like if it was available on the PSN or the Switch or something on Virtual Console, I think it would have a ton of sales. It's just like nobody has a Game Boy Advance anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of annoying with the whole GBA situation on the Switch right now. Because like, funnily enough, I forget if I mentioned this, but it was actually tested for their emulator, so it actually does work on it. It was one of the official tests done of all oddly
Oh,
specific
really?
things. Yeah, but either way, it it, it I mean, it still hasn't come out yet, though I will say everything else on that list for the most part has come out. Like nobody expected Golden Sun to come out, so I would expect
That's good.
I would expect that we'll probably see it at some point. Um, but still, it's just a weird platform to have it on. Like back on the GBA, it's just here's this little light thing with very light button presses. You know, it's very comfortable to play for long periods of time. And then on the Switch, with its clacky buttons and weird placement, oftentimes, like I know I personally have a hard time playing on that thing for an extended period of time because my hands begin to hurt. Um,
Yeah.
but oh, also, hang on, just one sec. One quick pause. I gotta go check on something real quick. Alrighty, sorry for the random delay there. We've got people that come by to try and fix our roof and gutters and stuff pretty much all the time.
Okay. Yeah, we get a lot of them out here too. There's a lot of hail damage.
Yeah, like it's funnily enough having worked in that industry for a little while, they literally will just keep entire lists and just send people out at random. But
Good.
yeah, it's a very annoying job to do. Nobody wants
Yeah,
you
I
there.
don't
You don't want to
envy
be
the
there.
people who yeah, I don't envy anybody who has to go door to door. Like that has got to be miserable. Though I do appreciate the ones where they're just like, nope, we're good, and they leave. Right? Like versus the people who try and sell you on whatever it is.
Yeah, it's what's funny is that there's almost no point in pushing. Like every sales thing that you'll ever do, they're like, no, 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 you got to be a wolf, not a sheep. All this other bullshit. And it's like, if somebody isn't looking to do it right now, like you're not going to convince them to have money in the bank to do this right now. Like, you're
Right.
not you're not magic. You're just a person talking. Uh,
It's kind of like the two people who watch Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, right? Like coffee is for closers. Like some people watch that and take it to heart, and other people watch it and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that's completely that's the point of it."
yeah, it's like every sales job, every manager will constantly tell you this stuff. Like, no, this is the only way that it possibly works. And it's like, the only reason that your top sellers are selling right now is because you're taking anything that has any hope of success and throwing it on like two people and telling everybody else to just
Yeah,
kind of do their best. It's like you're giving yourself bad data. I don't know what to tell you. Uh, like I think probably
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I can feel I'm hitting the end of my voice, so we might have to talk Tactics Ogre more
Okay, sorry, go
another
ahead.
time. I know
Oh,
there's a lot we didn't get to. I forgot that my voice does give out. And you and I talk a lot faster than I talk when I'm on stream by myself. I just realized.
fair
So
point, fair point. Well, it
if you don't
happens.
mind,
Part two.
we'll call this part one.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I will let you go, and next time I have any free time, we'll I'll be a little more focused.
Hell yeah, I'll pretend to do the same.
All
All
right.
right. Well,
Take
this was
care.
fun. All right.
Good
Likewise.
one.
You have yourself a good one. I'll see you.
Bye.